Brought to you by Purdue University, the only university on Fast Company's Brands That Matter list. 4 years running. Honored as a heritage brand, Purdue pushes innovation and partnership to make a consequential impact on the world. Learn more at purdue.edu/partner with us. Brought to you by Williams. We make clean energy happen.
I'm Yasmin Gagne.
I'm Josh Christensen.
And this is Most Innovative Companies. On today's episode, Fast Company global design editor Mark Wilson and Fast Company producer Hauwa Otori talk about Slate's ultra-cheap electric vehicles.
The sort of announcement and rollout of this, I think, has been just a master play.
Yahoo CEO Jim Lanzone on incorporating Artifact onto its new app.
Really, it's just about the Yahoo News app getting smarter at delivering the right content to you at the right time.
And as always, keeping tabs.
I went to one professional tournament and I'm like, wow, tennis.
But first, here's the download, the news you need to know this week in the world of business and innovation.
OpenAI is buying Windsurf, an AI-assisted coding tool, marking its largest purchase of a company to date. Last fall, Windsurf achieved a valuation of $1.25 billion. The acquisition of Windsurf will bolster the coding abilities of ChatGPT. Separately, OpenAI's plans to split into a nonprofit and for-profit company have been abandoned. The company will stay under the control of its nonprofit board and preserve its mission of, quote, benefiting humanity.
This Saturday, Warren Buffett, the 94-year-old CEO of Berkshire Hathaway, said that he will retire at the end of the year. That was actually kind of a surprise to everyone, despite him being 94 years old.
Still going strong.
While Buffett will stay on as chairman, the company's board unanimously voted in Buffett's successor, Greg Abel, to assume the role of president and CEO of Berkshire Hathaway at the start of 2026.
I think in high school, I for too long thought his name was Warren Buffet.
That's not true.
I think...
Oh my God, It's because of Phoebe Buffet on Friends.
I think so. This past weekend, President Trump announced his intention to levy tariffs on films made abroad. There are currently no details on how the tariffs would be implemented, what exactly will be taxed, and who exactly might bear the brunt. The markets responded Monday, as they have with other tariff threats from this administration. Disney, Warner Brothers Discovery, Paramount Global, and Netflix all saw sharp declines in their share prices.
Food delivery app DoorDash announced this week that it will acquire two companies, 7 Rooms, a hospitality management platform, and Deliveroo, a British company that also does food delivery. DoorDash will acquire Deliveroo for about $3.9 billion and 7 Rooms for about $1.2 billion. DoorDash also failed to meet its first quarter revenue expectations, probably because it's spending so much money, causing a 5% drop in shares.
And finally, in an announcement last Friday, the White House said it plans on slashing federal spending by $163 billion for next fiscal year. Cuts are proposed for the Low-Income Home Energy Assistance Program, the Department of Housing and Urban Development, the Environmental Protection Agency, science missions at NASA, the National Institutes of Health, the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, the National Science Foundation, the Education Department, and many other things, including Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid. On the other hand, Defense and Homeland Security will be receiving boosts in their spending, and money will be earmarked for RFK Jr.'s Make America Healthy Again program, as well as for many charter schools, and I guess opening Azkaban? Alcatraz.
Have you seen that meme?
Alcatraz.
Have you seen that meme where it's like, I know what we should do with Alcatraz, and it's just... It's like a flag that says Y Combinator on the building. And that's the news you need to know today. So, Josh, did you ever have a Yahoo email address?
I only ever had a Yahoo email address for fantasy football purposes,
right,
because that was
sense.
for a big thing. But I never actually used it for anything. I think the earliest internet, I had an AOL account. I had an AOL.com account, and I think I had... This is so embarrassing. Do you know that there's a cable company called Cox?
No.
COX.
I feel like you got tricked.
I had an email address through that company at cox.net. So my email was jchris@cox.net.
Nope, that sounds like something else.
Yep, no, I know. Exactly. What about you? Did you have a Yahoo
I never did.
email address? What was your oldest email address?
It was a Hotmail.
That's a classic.
It's yazzyg@hotmail.com.
That's a good one.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. That's a good
That's how I got my Instagram name.
Yeah, there you go. Per the Hotmail. Hotmail is like a real classic.
Yeah. My name is Yaz. My sister's name is Sam. And my parents' email address was .com, which
That's
is
confusing.
pretty embarrassing, to be honest.
Shared email addresses are like a thing for our parents' generation.
Yeah, because I think
my
in the
parents
90s
still
you
have
just
one.
didn't know.
Yeah.
You know?
My parents had one that was like, I'm not going to say the actual email address because I think they still use it, but it was just like a Jane and Joe at so, and that's not my parents' names, but it was.
Well, my father-in-law loves scuba diving. His name is Rodrigo. I won't give you the .com address, but it's rodrigoscuba at something.com, which I think
excellent.
is so
I love
funny.
including your interests in your email address. Honestly,
I had a
it
friend
was a
named
better time.
Dreamy Claire 12.
That's great.
I was like, that's good.
Naming yourself, we were so less concerned with how embarrassing it would be later. We did some truly amazing things in the 90s and early aughts.
Now, the reason we're talking about this is because later on in the episode, I talked to Yahoo CEO Jim Lanzone. But first, we're talking about electric vehicles. US EV sales are up year over year. They were actually up 15% by the end of 2024. But Americans' interest in owning an EV is actually down by 8% from 2 years ago. Now, a new Michigan-based startup, Slate Auto, plans to change that. This week, we invited Fast Company global design editor Mark Wilson and Fast Company producer Hauwa Otori to explain how Slate Auto is trying to make a $20,000 electric vehicle. So Hauwa, Slate Auto recently came out of stealth mode. They announced a new electric vehicle. Tell me, what is their deal? What's going on?
Slate Auto is a recently announced new EV startup, really focusing on producing affordable, accessible EV trucks. As you mentioned, their price point, they're expecting it to be under $20K. And that's with federal tax incentives for EVs, right? So under $20K is what they're expecting. But if you compare that to, for instance, like the Cybertruck.
Right.
And worth every penny, according to Max Offberg.
But yeah, so, with the incentive, it's coming out around $68K. So as you can see, like a Slate Auto truck is on the complete opposite end, right, when it comes to pricing. So this is what the company is saying is, one of their key differentiators.
And we should point out that Slate Auto raised, $111 million from the likes of Jeff Bezos. I mean, they've raised a lot of money.
Yeah, that's right. They raised $111 million in their Series A. They closed on their Series B at the end of late 2024. And from what I'm hearing from the company, they're in the middle of their next round. So quite a bit of money. And obviously it takes a lot of money to get a startup like this off the ground. So it looks like there is interest in the market.
But as we know from Humane, you can raise a lot of money.
Yeah,
and
Mark
make a horrible
knows
product.
enough about this.
And build something terrible for the world.
So, to explain how they're keeping the costs super low, Hauwa, why don't you start? And then, Mark, I want to talk about some of the design elements that make the car so cheap.
Yeah, it's interesting because me and Mark were talking about this beforehand. And, you can't really talk about design without talking about manufacturing. These things kind of go hand in hand, right? So one thing that I heard from Jeremy Snyder at Slate Auto, who is their chief commercial officer, he was saying, listen, traditional cars have around 2,000 parts, right? So the Slate Auto truck has about 500. So they're really focusing on, doing this in an efficient, effective way that's also super safe for people to drive. In terms of manufacturing, and I know Mark will get into this as well, like, for instance, one of the manufacturing points is on the paint, right? So there is no paint. They're going to allow for vinyl wraps, and also looking to the exterior body of the vehicle, it's going to be more plastic than steel, or metal, right? So if you don't have to worry about the metal press, you don't have to worry about the paint. There are reports that the CEO, Chris Barman, who came out of Chrysler, is saying, listen, that alone saves us about between $350 and $500 million alone. And they're also focusing on the singular model, right? We don't want to be distracted. We just want to focus on this one product.
This car sounds so janky to me, but Mark, tell us more.
I mean, I want to frame this to you, Mark, in a very blunt way. Do you like this car? Does it look good? Do you like the car?
Look, it's not my favorite truck design. I do think.
What is your favorite truck?
Oh, that's a really good question. I haven't thought about. Actually,
it's gonna derail us. We'll get to that later.
Yeah, we should get to it. But look, I think what they did that was very brilliant in designing the Slate was they borrowed from like a lot of different designs that people like, right? So like if you look at that core silhouette, it is like a 1980s Toyota Tacoma, right? Like very much
Yeah.
a small truck that people still want to buy. You look at the front and you see like light headlights that look a little bit like a Rivian or something, right? Like you get all of these little EV touches. And then if you go to actually customize the vehicle, like it's only in slate gray or whatever, but all of the silhouettes are very familiar. So you can make it look kind of like a cheap Land Rover. You can make it kind of like a cheap Wrangler. You know, this is like no shade on the design team because I think it was like a very clever strategy, but they're just really borrowing from, you know, silhouettes that people I think know and love within the auto industry already, and then like saying like, hey, you can get like the cheap version, right? Like you can have the Zara version of your Rivian, just like cheaper.
The fast fashion truck
it is though. It's such a fast fashion truck. I mean, also, so this is why I don't totally know how I feel about the truck, because like the whole thing is freaking plastic, right? Which is
that was something that alarmed me. And also, if it's only made with 500 parts, I guess if your door falls off, like
it's not
the whole
constructed by Boeing. Yeah,
truck is gone. Well, so actually, you bring up Rivian, and Rivian is sort of the other vehicle startup that Jeff Bezos invested in. He invested $700 million in it, and that's kind of how it took off. How do you feel about Rivians?
I like Rivians, but they are, you know, until we see like their newer models that are coming out, like the R2 and R3, right? They are clearly aimed at a portion of the population that can afford them and essentially no one else, right? So,
right.
I mean, it's like Patagonia times 100. Most people are never going to be able to drive a Rivian. So I can appreciate that about this. I think the other reason they're striking a chord is like there's a demand that I think Detroit never saw for that like small to mid-sized truck. And, you know, when we saw the Ford Lightning come around, it felt like they were trying to prove to everyone, look, we can make a big, powerful truck that's electric. And I think that made sense to them because like the F-150 and those larger pickups are technically the best-selling vehicles, right? Like Ford sold 750,000 F-150s roughly last year. When its smaller truck, the Maverick, they sold about 131,000, right? So like on one hand, there's a much smaller demand for these small trucks. However, I think the EV buyer is more likely to want the small truck, if that makes sense, because they live in like close to an urban environment, something like that. They're not in middle America. They don't need a 400-mile gas tank, right? And like dually tires. It's just a very different sort of like market they're going for.
Now, Hauwa, I want to talk a little bit about manufacturing. You mentioned some of the sort of, I was going to say ingredients. That's so the wrong word for this. But, you know, you mentioned the plastic that makes up the car, but the car is actually all manufactured in the U.S. What can you say about that?
They really wanted to focus on being American made. So one thing I didn't say at the top is this company, right, came out of a manufacturing company called Real Build Manufacturing. And so they're really focusing, that's like kind of the mission, right? They want to revitalize or reindustrialize America. So that is sort of their focus and why they're really committed to building here and also sourcing here, right? So I'm hearing from the company that they've mostly sourced from American companies or North American companies. That's really what they're focusing on. And then if you look at the production facility out in Warsaw, Indiana, right, they're really about bringing that workforce back into play, right? So they initially wanted to go with brownfield sites rather than greenfield. So really focusing on remodeling an existing factory to fit their needs. So they picked this printing factory that closed down a few years ago. They lost about 500 jobs when it closed down. And they're looking at bringing back about 2,000 jobs like to this market and this community. So it's all part of, hey, like we're American made. We want to kind of speak to the American buyer and not, as Mark was saying, not someone who, you know, can afford the Rivian or whatever it is, but who can really afford that low cost truck and vehicle to really fit their day-to-day tasks.
Now, I gotta say, thinking of Mark's fast fashion analogy, one of the reasons fast fashion is cheap is because labor is cheap and materials are cheap. And I'm curious, you know, do you have a sense of how much they're paying people in Warsaw? Do you have a sense of how much the materials they're using from America cost compared to how much they cost in China? Have you heard anything about this?
No, I haven't heard anything about those specific details yet. The production facility, they're still actually working on it now. I'm hearing that it's going to go online sometime next year. And then, of course, the truck is expected to be out in the market by the end of Q4 2026. So, all of these details are still kind of, being kept under wraps if they do know them. But right now, no sense of that in terms of cost and pricing and what that could expect, right? And that goes into the whole personalization of it all. When you're looking at those accessories, I think the only thing they have listed on their site is the wrap kit, right? So rather than the paint, you have the option to do the vinyl wrap for whatever color you want. Those are going to be starting around $500 according to the website. But outside of that, there's really no pricing yet on what these accessories could cost down the line. But I guess that's something we can all look out for in the next few months.
Yeah. Child labor.
Oh my God. Well, I mean, the accessories, they really stripped just about everything out of this truck. It doesn't have power windows. It doesn't have a stereo system. You can get all of these things, I believe, as upgrades or like source from other manufacturers, I think that they've been saying, or 3D print them yourself if you have a 3D printer, which I think that adds a little bit of a cost to as someone like me. That feels like a big part of their play here is, it's under $20,000, but they have all of these other upgrades that you can get, which, yes, that keeps the truck cheap, but it's also more stuff they can sell, right?
The sort of announcement and rollout of this, I think, has been just a master play, right, of PR and marketing, in that we don't really know what it's going to cost, I think, for most people to buy, right? We keep hearing this like $20,000 number, assuming EV subsidies are really safe in the Trump administration, which I imagine that, like, what could happen to them? But like, nobody really knows like what these configurations and configurators will actually like add up to in the end. But like, Tesla's played this game for years too, right? Where they came in and I forgot what they said the Cybertruck was originally going to cost. Was it like 30,000, 40,000? It was like really low. And then it was like, it came out way more expensive. And then like they sold the Model 3, but you couldn't actually get the Model 3 in the cheaper configurations for a long time. So they really like did that to the max, introducing like mechanical windows and things like that, which, look, I'm fine with them. But I think we will see like in 2 to 3 to 4 months, like however this plays out, that like there might be some sticker shock to people who thought they were buying the $20,000 EV and all of a sudden they're like at 55 or something.
So how I'm curious, you chatted with some analysts about this, about, the economic opportunity, about the pricing. What did they tell you?
Yeah, so I had a chance to chat with Philip Kamshoff out of McKinsey. He leads their automotive practice. And in terms of, is there a market for a truck like this? Bottom line is the jury's still out, right? He did indicate, hey, listen, in the US, there is that market for that customizable approach. One of the brands that he mentioned that has done that successfully is Jeep, right? But when you get to looking at the adoption rates of EVs, obviously in the US, it's much lower as compared to other markets like China or even some areas in Latin America. So what can you do to like kind of get those adoption rates up? We can rely on things like pricing. So that could be an impact. One of the things that Philip had mentioned to me was, hey, like if you look at China and other markets, when they did introduce low cost, low price EVs, the adoption rates did go up, right? So that could potentially happen here in the US. The only thing to consider and the drawbacks there are, I think McKinsey had a study that came out last year that said, hey, like 46% of current EV owners are thinking about going back to their fuel-powered cars, right? And why is that? It's things due to, like, for instance, the charging infrastructure and just kind of concerns and frustrations around that. So in the thing that stood out to me in that conversation was he mentioned, hey, listen, even if there is that market and people do want to buy this type of truck and this type of vehicle and EV adoption goes up, then you have to consider other things like public charging infrastructure. Because again, looking at the core market, that's what we haven't talked about. They're thinking about targeting those wage workers, right? Hourly wage workers. These may be people who don't own their own homes and are really relying on sort of the public charging infrastructure. So if you solve one problem, you kind of have to deal with the other one is really what it comes down to.
Do they have any plan for that public charging? Because essentially right now, as I understand it, Tesla owns by far the most charging station, and then it's like an adapter situation, or these companies have to buy in and work with Tesla on that. Is that basically what they're expecting to have to do?
Yeah, and I think they're offering options, right? So if you're able to charge at home, you can. If you're able to access the public charging, you can. They really just want to give people as many options as possible. They're also partnering with service providers across the country as well. So they're really trying to sort of build that infrastructure to help support their customer base.
Man, the other reason electric vehicles, sorry, kind of suck is that they make you so car sick all the time. The minute a Tesla pulls up, if I call an Uber, I'm like, it's over.
Is that an
It's
electric
over.
car thing across the board, or is that just a Tesla
Yeah,
thing?
it's apparently it's an electric car thing. It's like the way they brake.
You're also very susceptible
I'm
to
constantly car
sickness.
sick, but
Yeah.
I hate EVs. Sorry. I love the environment, but there's got to be a better way.
You can tune down the regenerative braking and like have it be a little more chill. But
That's what I tell people, but
the Model 3 has like very crappy suspension too. So I also dread
Oh,
like
yeah.
a long like Uber ride in them because
Yeah.
it's a little rough.
we talked about Slate's production facility, and we talked a little bit about, Mark, you talked a little bit about the announcement, but this all seems so far away. Hauwa, what can you tell us about that? What are the big open questions we have here?
From what I understand from the company, they always plan to announce around this time, right? And from what you hear from reports and what people have been saying is, hey, you kind of want enough time to get a sense of like, hey, who is going to be our customers? Where is this customer base going to come from? Let's sort of do that information gathering now, which is why, you see on their website, you're able to reserve a car, right, for that $50 fee, which is refundable. So I think they just want to get a better idea of like, hey, we have this product now. Where is this market and how can we serve them?
And prior to the launch, they had a bunch of stunty stuff so that, they parked their prototypes on Abbott Kinney and they filed for all these trademarks like "we built it, you make it," which really does sound like children's toys to me.
Just it's the Hot Wheels new slogan.
But
STEM,
Mark,
STEM product.
yeah. What do you think of that kind of marketing campaign? Does it resonate with you?
I mean, no. But I thought their marketing of showing so many different like skin versions of the vehicle was interesting because it almost seemed like to me like they were pitching like small business owners, honestly.
Yeah.
Like I feel like there was one for like a dog washing business or something, right? And some EVs, like I think about like Canoe, which was a configurable EV people were pretty excited about, founded by some ex-BMW people. And they were originally going after the consumer market, and they essentially shifted to go after like delivery and things like that. And so I don't know if it was like a little bit of hedge betting too, right? Where all of a sudden they're saying like, well, like middle America should love this, but if not, like there's lots of reasons you should buy a Slate.
That makes a lot of sense. And how the timing of this announcement kind of couldn't have been better, right? Given, public sentiments about Elon Musk and Tesla, but on the other side, all of this stuff to do with tariffs. It seems like people on both sides of the aisle can reason their way into thinking the car is amazing for America. Tell me about that. Was it just always planned to be around now?
Yeah, their executive, Jeremy Snyder, said, hey, we've always had this plan. There was really nothing that was pushing us to do it around this time.
That sounds so fake, given that the car is coming out at the end of 2026. You know what I mean? Like,
Listen, I know what they're saying, but it was good timing. If they had to move things up a little bit, I think maybe that decision could have been made.
last serious question. What is Slate's business model? How are they going to make money off of this? Is it through customization? What does that look like?
Yeah, I mean, they're really focusing on direct to consumer, producing these cars and then getting it directly to customers. Jeremy Snyder, he actually came from Tesla and he was like, hey, this is the best way for us to kind of move forward. Obviously, there are pros and cons to that, right, in terms of how this could work for them. The pro being, hey, they have direct access to their customers to really take control over that customer journey, and they can gather some data and see what insights they get from that. It could help them build like their brand loyalty, right, with those particular customers. And what we know from McKinsey studies is EV owners are not necessarily that loyal to EV brands and they often switch. So it could be a way for them to really get that foothold with their customers. The con side of things is, there could be a chance of like lower capital, right? So not only are you producing the car, you're also now responsible for selling it. So you could be working with less capital, particularly for a startup. So we'll see what happens.
So last question for everyone here. Would you get a Slate truck? And if so, or even if not, how would you customize it? Hauwa, let's start with you.
Okay.
Give Mark some time to think, because I feel like you have really real opinions about this.
I'm going to take a deep breath before I say this. And I'm going to ask, is this a safe space? I feel like we've been chatting for a while.
This is a safe space.
I feel like
It's
it's a
not.
safe
It
space.
is not. Don't listen to them.
This is absolutely a safe
Marsha,
space.
not on
Nothing.
my watch. Not on my watch. Okay, so first of all, I'm just going to admit something. I actually don't drive. I have a license, but I drive.
You live in LA. How do you
Listen,
not
How
drive?
I famously don't have a license and
Well,
can't drive.
I
Don't
know
worry.
better yet.
And no one is asking Yaz to drive.
No one wants
anytime
me to
soon.
drive ever.
To your question about the LA thing, Josh, we could talk about that offline. But yeah, so I feel like I'm probably the market that they're targeting. I'm like, oh my gosh, this looks really cool. It's supposed to be, super cheap. I personally wouldn't do the vinyl wrap. I would get it. I would just keep it the slate gray. I'm into, power windows. I'm not really trying to, do the whole manual thing. I'm not sure about that. The only thing that I'm like, maybe hesitant on is the whole DIY situation, which I know is like, again, kind of like the core customer that they're targeting. And you don't need to do it all yourself. You could always go to a service provider, but I'm just like, I don't necessarily want to build it, but I also don't know if I want to feel like I'm paying on top of what I'm already going to be paying for.
Mark, what do you think you'd do?
I'm going just straight base model, tiny pickup, like spending no extra anything on more plastic. Look, I actually think that's like the deal, right? Like, and if you get a car like this, like get the deal. Otherwise, spend money and wait for like the R2 or R3, which are like are getting more into that like, like 40-ish, whatever, 50-ish range. But like, no, seriously, for whatever I said about the vehicle, like I think like little pickups are fantastic. They're like very practical. And so that's my go.
You wouldn't draw anything on it? That's like what I would do. I'm like, guys, I wouldn't.
You can't draw on plastic. This is the thing. Like, I'm still curious, like how the
Not
doors
with that
feel open and
attitude.
close. Yeah, it's true. I need to like maybe I could Dremel into it or something, right? And then like you could do some sort of treatment.
Josh, what about you?
My biggest thing about EVs is I live in an apartment, so like the charging infrastructure is a question. I don't have a garage I can put it in, so I probably wouldn't be getting this or any other EV unless I had like a house where I could hook it up. But I do kind of like it. Like I kind of like the way it looks.
How would you customize it?
I would probably get the SUV kit, so it's a 5-seater. I probably wouldn't. I kind of like just the plain gray. I think they're kind of cool looking. I'm into it. I think the biggest utility of it, you know what I would absolutely do? I think it's the perfect second car for people, especially if like you do some utility like work, like you help a lot of friends move. This is not what I'm doing, but like I know like my uncle is like a carpenter on the side. Like he just does it for fun on the side, and having like a little pickup truck like this would be perfect for someone who's doing that sort of stuff. So I see the utility in it, and like I kind of like the way it looks. And yeah, the only thing preventing me is that I don't have anywhere to park it and charge it.
Word.
Would Lou get this? Would your husband get this?
Yes, but I don't think any of you are thinking big enough, okay?
Oh, wow.
What I'm saying here is, A, I've always wanted to try doing graffiti somewhere, and I feel like the car is the perfect opportunity. B, you don't need to pay someone. You buy a bunch of flame decals and spray paint flames on the car. That'd be cool. And C, you could upsell it by spray painting a logo of a different car on it. So it looks... That's correct. Well, but that value's going down.
Yeah, that resale's not. It's
You
not
could
going
do-
up
you
there.
could do like
you could do a
a-
Rivian.
No, you could do like a Rolls Royce, because nobody actually sees them in the wild. So you'd be like,
You could be like,
oh,
this
fuck,
is
that's a Rolls Royce
Rolls-Royce's,
EV.
like,
Yeah. Yeah. So all I'm saying is, think bigger, guys. Like,
I mean, you can vinyl wrap it in anything. Like that's you can have just like a giant version of your face on it. Like they'll vinyl wrap whatever you want.
It does feel a little like a Fortnite car.
yeah, I was thinking that too.
Yeah.
It needs to be in purple.
Yeah.
Battle bus purple from Jeff Bezos.
Thank the bus driver.
We'll be back with Mark and Hauwa for keeping tabs, but first, a quick break followed by my interview with Yahoo CEO Jim Lanzone.
As affordable, reliable energy demand increases at historic rates, one company is uniquely positioned to accelerate America forward: Williams. We have 117 years of know-how in powering progress, and we're ready to power the next 100 years of innovation. Learn how our natural gas infrastructure is critical to the future of AI at williams.com.
In March 2024, Yahoo bought Artifact, a news aggregation app built by Instagram co-founders Kevin Systrom and Mike Krieger. Then it used the architecture behind the app in its own brand new news app. That Yahoo News app creates an AI-powered personalized news feed for users based on their interests. A feature called Key Takeaways can even give them a bullet summary of an article when they don't want to read the whole thing. Something that, as a writer, is really depressing. I spoke to Jim Lanzone about the acquisition, the role of AI in news aggregation, and the newish Yahoo News app. Hey, Jim, welcome to the show.
Thank you. So good to be here.
Jim, I want to talk about Yahoo's acquisition of Artifact last year. It's now part of Yahoo's revamped news app, which launched last June, but I'm curious, why was Artifact an attractive acquisition target for you?
Well, we definitely will look to acquire companies if they can fill a gap for us. We're not really in the game of acqui-hires or anything like that. It has to be a product fit. And for us, we're the number one news publication in the US online. News is incredibly important to us.
What does the number one news platform mean? Where do you get those metrics?
Number one ranked in ComScore, so for total traffic.
Got it.
Yahoo gets to that point by being an aggregator. We're aggregating thousands of sources and then using algorithms to surface the right ones for each of our millions of users. And Artifact had come up as a startup founded by the Instagram founders that we were all huge fans of. It used AI and advanced algorithms to both pull in really great content and also just do a really great job of surfacing it and a really great UI to their users. So we all, were pretty new at Yahoo when that app popped up, and we were all big fans. And so when we read that they were actually going to shut it down, I asked Kevin immediately to say, hey, don't shut it down. Should we talk about acquiring it? And after some back and forth, we did that. And we actually did something kind of unprecedented, which is we basically took the Artifact app and really made it the Yahoo News app.
Got it.
And we went into a deep couple of month process with them to import that app into ours and come up with a best of breed between the two, but really using the backbone of Artifact as the new Yahoo News app.
So I want to talk a little bit more about using AI to personalize news feeds. What does that look like? Like, how does that start in the app, and how do you think about surfacing content?
Well, for the end user, hopefully they don't think about it at all.
Mm-hmm.
Really, it's just about the Yahoo News app getting smarter at delivering the right content to you at the right time. And so that's both in how we are gathering information from all the sources that we work with. And we should talk about that because I think Yahoo actually is a unique place in the market.
You're talking about the sort of revenue share model you have, right?
Yeah, and how we're very pro-publisher, and we really are a big part of the ecosystem. And it's not just about users on Yahoo, it's also sending them traffic and giving them revenue as part of it. And we've been doing that for over 20 years. And so that's...
I gotta say, I get that is in some ways pro-publisher. I do think, AI summaries that are coming up on search or, summarizing articles via bullet points is not exactly pro-publisher. Does that make sense? How do you think about that?
Well, I would think about it a little bit differently. If you go back to the beginning of how Yahoo has always worked with publishers, we're a huge part of the ecosystem in sending traffic out. So we are a meaningful percentage of the traffic of a huge amount of the publishers online in almost every category. And that happens because while we, in effect, the first step is on Yahoo for that article, everything else winds up happening over on the publisher's site. So every link out from Yahoo then is on the publisher's site. So we're, we have a history of that. It's very important to us to keep the ecosystem very healthy, at least how it historically was. I understand your point. And certainly that's a new factor for publishers to worry about in terms of people, AI companies sucking in all their data and then without
I mean, what are your conversations? What are your conversations?
That's 0%
with
of what Yahoo's doing. Everything we do is with the publisher. So in fact, with the new Artifact app, one of the things that we brought to the table for that was all of our publisher relationships. So the data that's going into this app is an extension of our pre-existing relationships with all the publishers, and is doing the same thing of then sending them traffic. So even when there's a summary, which we do as takeaways, so it's not trying to end around the article. It really is trying to do the highlights of it. We also, though, will summarize a topic. So if it's LA fires, for example, which is happening right now, we can summarize that topic across publishers just for helpful understanding. But again, it then all goes back to the funnel of sending people down the funnel to their properties.
Well, that's if they want to learn more, I guess, right?
Well, I don't know how much I'm still with any of these apps, but I'd call it, I'd say they're bullet point, short tidbits at the top. They're really summarizing the whole article.
Speaking of sort of AI algorithms and how they sort of surface things that are of interest to people, it's always a weird one, I think, for any publisher, because it's like the algorithm that people follow can contribute to their biases, right?
Yeah.
Yahoo's role is nonpartisan, but how do you think about balancing the goal of providing a customer service with preventing the kind of either spread of misinformation or information that only reinforces a reader's beliefs?
Yeah, it's a great question. We think a lot about it, and to your point, I'm glad you realize that about us. We take the color purple very seriously and trying to be very nonpartisan. It's plain. It's a hard job. One of the ways we're getting it right is I get nasty emails from people on both sides.
From both sides, yeah.
Accusing us of doing, they're in there. By the way, they're 100% sure of it.
Yeah.
So it is interesting because part of our algorithm is to make sure you don't go too into the rabbit hole and that you actually can continue to see a balance of things. At the same time, our job is to customize for you as an individual. So the algorithms take that into account in trying to balance it. But there are a couple other things happening, right? So one is we also balance with human curation, which is part of Yahoo being the trusted guide for all of these years. That certainly is part of our DNA and still part of how we do that upstream. We have a big team that it's not only left to the algorithm. So, it's garbage in, garbage out. It's also the opposite. Good information in, good information out. And then, of course, I think the fact that we are working with trusted publishers that we have longstanding relationships with, we're not UGC. Misinformation, just people getting something wrong, will always be part of journalism. Or, at that point, and I think a lot about this, you're really talking about trust in Yahoo, and then it's trust in a publisher.
Yeah. So the app right now is free, and I think, you may not even have to create a Yahoo account to access it. But how do you think about monetizing it? Like, how is it part of Yahoo's business strategy?
The full ecosystem for Yahoo, and again, if you zoom even further on the company, and I think some people are surprised to hear it, not us, because we've been a part of the turnaround here. But in any given month, we are usually the number 2 ranked property in ComScore in the US, multi-platform across desktop and mobile. We're top 5 in both. We're top 5 with Gen Z. And 90% of internet users in the US touch Yahoo in any given month. So monetization of any one property is not our issue. We monetize very well. Most of it is through advertising. Like with any major freemium publisher or product, a certain percentage of our users subscribe to our more premium offerings and given categories like sports or finance or email. And so, those are the 2 main revenue models, and news is just a part of that.
The reason I bring this up is because you've said job number 1 is making every one of these products and brands under Yahoo super strong on their own within the categories in which they operate.
Did say that.
And there have been news reports saying you might want to spin off different products and take them public. There have been other reports saying you might want to take the company public as a whole. And I guess I'm trying to get a sense of what you think the future is for Yahoo.
I guess I would answer that maybe 2 ways. One is it's our job to create value and grow the business, which is now, this March will be 30 years old as Yahoo.
Yeah.
We also own AOL, which is even older than that. But for those who don't know, both companies were acquired by Verizon in the 2010s. The company was spun out of Verizon by Apollo, the world's largest private equity firm, in September 21. I came in as CEO that month.
But PE firms want a return.
PE firms want an announcement window on a return. There are two ways to get a return if you're a private equity firm, right? You could go public or you can sell. It's also possible that your investors feel that they have a tiger by the tail and want to hold out longer. And either way, and I've founded startups, I've worked in big public companies. It doesn't matter the size of your company. The name of the game is growth either way. And that's also a sign of a healthy company. It's a sign that you're delivering for users. I mean, it really does capture everything. So our team does not focus on that outcome because we don't need to. We don't need to be out trolling for some version of that outcome. If we take care of making this company great, and that starts with our products, plain and simple. It also includes other things like our brand and our revenue models and other things. That score will take care of itself, people say, and that is absolutely true with the outcome here. We will create a very valuable company, whether it's us standalone going public or it's someone acquiring the company. That said, we definitely have inbounds all the time especially probably because we're owned by private equity, of people trying to pick off part of our pieces of our company. And, part of the private equity game is probably to listen to everybody and understand what your options are. So that's just part of the reality of life in this kind of company.
Which properties are you placing more resources on in terms of the future of Yahoo?
Some people would answer that more like I can't pick one out. Which of my
I would have called you out if you answered that one to me.
The ones are the same ones that they've always been for Yahoo: email, search, Yahoo Finance, Yahoo Sports, Yahoo News, and we touch a lot of other ones. And we have big and small properties. Ones that are Yahoo branded. There's AOL, which is actually still a really big and growing, healthy company. We also, by the way, have a big ad tech business. We actually own the largest private DSP, my demand-side platform, and that competes with Trade Desk, DV360 owned by Google, Amazon's DSP, and have been investing in the growth there because that can be a very valuable asset as well.
Every search engine tech company that puts out any kind of content or that aggregates content is partnering with these AI companies like OpenAI or Anthropic or what have you. What do those contracts look like? What do those talks look like?
The first thing through my mind is how much people want to hear about my contracts with people.
Yeah.
I understand your question. For us, it's interesting because going back to the late 2000s, Yahoo has had a long-standing relationship with Microsoft. So our search ads are part of our Microsoft partnership. Our index search is part of our Microsoft partnership. We provide value around the edges of that, especially with our unique data in our unique user relationships, to be able to provide great products in our search pages. That's not something you would get through that, but we ultimately monetize that way. It also led to, obviously, a very easy relationship with Microsoft Copilot.
Yeah.
In the early days with OpenAI, we worked, because we had a great partnership with Microsoft, which truthfully has never been better. I mean, we actually internally put a lot of emphasis on making sure that we're working really well with them and so they're going great. But we have more products than that. And as one example, in email, which is one of our most important products, second largest email platform after Gmail, it's still hundreds of millions of users, and something where I brought in one of our best product teams and engineering teams to really try to give that category a run for its money. And we were taking extremely seriously. And so even a year before Apple announced this Apple Intelligence series of products that would show up in their mail product, we announced a year prior, as one example, AI in Yahoo Mail, helping you search it, summarize it, write, edit, all those things. And that partnership was done with OpenAI in that instance. We also are partners with Anthropic, with Google, and others on other products that we have. So beyond search, we work with everybody so far. And we'll continue to do so. We also, at the same time, are internally building a bunch of our own AI products against all that. And, I think it's too important to the future of where this is all headed to leave it purely to third parties. At a certain point, we have to have our own expertise there.
My last question is, you're on the board of Snap.
Yeah, newly. I've just last September, so brand new to it.
Well, yeah, you've been there for a few months. I feel like I can still ask this.
Yeah.
This month, we're going to see if TikTok sticks around or not. I guess I'm curious how you think social media is changing and what you think what role Snap is going to play in that.
Well, I would not argue that I'm the spokesperson for Snap.
Sure.
A director for a company is a very different role than
Yeah,
the operator of the company. So probably the wrong resource for that question. I'd just say that as someone new to it and understanding the category, to have 850 million users and a footprint that big, and being so strong as a core communications platform for so many people. And I've been fascinated just at how deep the relationship is between their users and themselves. And I think it goes back to trust, for what they're known for. And again, that's where it connects to Yahoo. Is part of the humility of taking this company over in 2021 was also understanding that we got it at a point where we have the ability and privilege and ease of just focusing on the places where we're great.
Right.
Just focusing on the things that people appreciate us for and use us a lot for. And that really goes back to the original mission of the company, being the trusted guide to the internet through the Wild West that it was in 1995. That's where Yahoo earned the trust of users. If you can kind of fast forward to today and understand like the next 30 years, Jeff Bezos always says, what's not going to change in 10 years? And what's not going to change is the Wild West, especially now with AI and everything else. It's people are always going to need to be able to rely on us to help them get things done in the categories where they rely on us. And again, over time, maybe we'll expand what those are. But whether it's Yahoo or Snap, I think it's extremely important to know who you are and who you're serving and why, and never lose sight of that.
That's great. Well, thank you so much for coming on the show, Jim. This was great.
Thanks for having me. It was great.
Okay, we're back with Mark and Hauwa, and it's time to wrap up the show with Keeping Tabs. This is where each of us shares a story, trend, or piece of pop culture we're following right now. And Mark, I'll start with you. Since you're our guest, what are you keeping tabs on?
I mean, yet another video game on keeping tabs. I've abandoned all of the other ones I've ever mentioned, and now I'm playing Claire Obscure Expedition 33. A long version of a name that for a game that might be Game of the Year. Okay, there's a lot of buzz. There's a lot of buzz. By this French studio. It's like a JRPG made by a French studio. You get to like fight mimes, right? Like,
ooh,
it's pretty.
I love this. I love a JRPG.
Thank you.
No, I'm into it.
Dude, fighting a mime would be so fun. They literally couldn't make noise when they were hurt.
Oh, they don't. They
still
about it. Yeah.
committed to the job.
How far into it are you?
I'm like 8 hours, 4 of which were painful and 4 of which were fun. And now I think it's like good. Probably about that ratio from here on out. Yeah.
Hell yeah.
How many mimes did you?
2. Thank you for asking. They're
just
not,
2?
So far, like it's a special fight. It's not like there's mime after mime after mime. You like find them. You can like once you defeat them, obviously you get mime clothing, which you can run around with. Like you got a bag.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah, it's good.
Hauwa, what are you keeping tabs on?
Okay, I feel like I was pulling double duty this week, so I took off my fashion critic hat after the Met Gala. I was like, okay, let me put this away and really get back to being a tennis enthusiast. I discovered this in March. I'm actually a tennis enthusiast. I went to one professional tournament and I'm like, wow, tennis. I'm an expert.
It's a lot of good style opportunities with tennis. I've said this before.
Many times, yeah.
That's why I've considered taking up the sport.
Just walking around the tournament, I was like, wow, like everyone is dressed well. I'm taking notes. But it's the Italian Open this week, so I'm definitely just like obsessed with everything tennis at the moment. My thing is like it's clay season, and so anything can happen. Again, I just learned this term, and I've been saying it all the time.
It's clay season, so anything can happen.
Yeah.
So good.
Clay, I mean, famously, the French dominate on clay. I know that. Yeah, no, Rafael Nadal always won the French Open, which is on clay.
But he's not French.
Rafael Nadal?
He's Spanish, dude. He's like famously Spanish.
Rafael Nadal does sound like a Spanish name. Anyways, he dominated the French Open, but
It sounds like
the
a Spanish name, but
dominate on
unconfirmed.
clay.
But no, you are absolutely correct, Josh. As we know, he's retired now. So usually
Josh
it was like...
not absolutely correct.
No, I was quite wrong.
Listen, he was correct in that he did dominate the clay season portion of the tennis tournaments. He is retired now, so everyone's like, oh, like, it's anyone's to take at this point.
Oh, that's why anything can happen.
Yes, that, and just like, it's just so fascinating to watch. I'm really just obsessed with it's like a mind game. It's a physical game. I'm like, how are you doing this for like an hour and a half? Like, is everybody okay? Like, how are you hitting this ball like this? It's really wild to watch.
Is everybody okay? It's got to be weird playing on different surfaces because you have like the normal like tennis courts and then you have grass. They play on grass sometimes.
It's
Wimbledon?
yeah.
Yeah,
Wimbledon's on
Wimbledon.
grass, right?
Some really sophisticated tennis analysis we're
Man,
seeing.
grass. Clay?
I said, yeah.
Weird.
Josh, what are you keeping tabs on?
I'm keeping tabs on the end of Skype. Oh no, Skype's officially gone.
So sad.
Yeah, I loved Skype. Okay, so Skype has a pretty special place. Before the pandemic, when I was working at WNYC, Skype was what we would have people call into the show on when we had like remote guests that couldn't get into a studio elsewhere. We'd have them set up on Skype. So I'm very familiar with using Skype because I had good connection and a good microphone sound. It didn't overcompress, so people didn't sound like they were on a telephone. They sounded better overall. I also, in podcasting overall, there was like an era of narrative podcasts that constantly would use the Skype ring as like ambi into a piece of tape.
I know what you're talking about.
It was such a trend for a while, so I'll always have just like a special place in my heart for Skype as an audio professional.
I think maybe you were the last Skype user.
Oh, I haven't used Skype in years.
No, I know, but pre-pandemic, I was still not using Skype. Were you?
Yeah, that kind of fell out of favor pretty quick. But I think it was a good product, and I'll miss Skype. Yes, what are you keeping tabs on?
So last week was the finale of The Righteous Gemstones, a show that I enjoy, although not as much as other people because I think it's about 20% too gross. Like, I just didn't need to see Walton Goggins' dong more than once this past season. But very moving performance in the finale and through the season by Sean William Scott, star of Dude, Where's My Car? And Road Trip. Who knew he was actually a great actor? Phenomenal on screen. Very sad character.
Very interesting. He
Still
hasn't
hot
really done anything
for what it's worth.
before this for a while, right?
I think he has per Wikipedia, but I haven't watched it.
Yeah, he was Stifler is his most famous role.
I was going to
can't believe
say,
you
yeah,
didn't
it's called
mention this
Stifler
one.
hot.
Well, he is. Sorry,
Still
guys. He's
hot.
old.
Sorry.
He's old and hot. Well,
Was Stifler
Stifler's
hot?
still hot.
When American Pie came out, was Stifler hot that whole time?
no.
He got
No, I
hot
don't think he
after?
was generally.
No.
I
But
think
he's hot now. He was pretty hot in Dude, Where's My Car?
Stifler was not portrayed as someone who was supposed to be thought of as hot necessarily. He was just a D-bag overall. But objectively, Sean William Scott has always been
Good-looking man.
a good-looking, attractive man.
Anyway, I do feel like his talent was maybe wasted a little bit.
Yeah.
Now he's old. He's just really good as a depressed guy.
Oh.
So that's it for Most Innovative Companies. Mark and Hauwa, thank you for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you all for having us.
Our show is produced by Avery Miles and Blake Odom with help from Sam Gebauer and Hauwa Otori, who was just on the show. Editing by Matt Toder, mix and sound design by Nicholas Torres, and our executive producer is Josh Christensen. Remember again to subscribe, rate, and review, and we'll see you next week.